Welcome to Eleanor's World, my fellow and lovely members of the Lumos Lounge, your destination for magical stories and unforgettable journeys. Don't forget to comment the video. And for all of you that aren't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. Thank you for joining and helping to keep the magic alive. And now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Welcome back, Lumos Lounge. Today, I have a new story for you, Sincerity of Feeling by Bafflinghaze. You can find the story on Archive of Our Own. The link is in the description down below. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Summary. No, I'm going to the Yule Ball with the brightest wicks in Hogwarts. The boy blanched. A witch. I thought you hated Granger, said one of the others. Fleur grabbed the inspiration. That is correct. I'm going to the Yule Ball with Hermione Granger. Now run along, you little boys. She flipped back her hair and strode past them, and this time, stopped for none. Sincerity of feeling. Fleur glared unrepentantly at the Hogwarts boys in front of her. The constant interruptions had been annoying when Fleur first arrived at Hogwarts, but since the announcement of the Yule Ball, Fleur could barely take a step before being accosted by yet another unknown boy, asking her to the ball. I don't know you, she seethed. She looked over him in distaste. You do not even care for your own appearance. I would not trust to take you to the ball. She curled her lip and pushed past him and his group of friends. Her expression darkened further when she heard the boys mutter bitch at her back. She turned back around, snarling. If you cannot respect women, I shall hope you never have the opportunity to touch a woman. What the fuck? One of the boys said sharply. Ignore her, said another. She's probably queer. Fleur narrowed her eyes. And what if I am? She said, her voice low and dangerous. Don't you think that says more about you than me? That your personality is so weak that you must blame your failures on the woman? In the next beat, Fleur whipped around again, annoyed that she had let them distract her. She ignored the group's words and continued towards the library. The unfortunate side of living in the carriages was their utter lack of the centuries, old libraries of Beauxbaton. The Hogwarts library was much too English-centric, but it would have to do. She had only made it to the next corridor when yet cluster of Hogwarts boys came up to her. The tallest of them, the biggest of them, was at the front with a bouquet of roses. Miss Fleur Delacour, the boy said, smiling widely. Would you do the honor of going to the ball with me? No, Fleur snapped. I don't even know your name. And what can you offer me? Are you intelligent to hold words with me? Or can you fly well enough to keep up with me? Can you defeat a dragon if backed up against a wall? The boy's expression darkened for a moment, and then he smirked. I can fight you if that's what you wish. Therefore, none of the above, Fleur said. No, I am going to the Yule Ball with the brightest wicks in Hogwarts. The boy blanched. A witch. I thought you hated Granger, said one of the others. Fleur grabbed the inspiration. That is correct. I'm going to the Yule Ball with Hermione Granger. Now run along, you little boys. She flipped back her hair and strode past them, and this time stopped for none until she reached the Hogwarts library. She nodded at Madame Pince and continued deeper to the advanced texts. Hermione sighed and closed the book. After visiting the house elves, she just couldn't get their plight out of her head. Ron didn't understand anything, being a white wizard that he was. And Harry saw that the house elves appeared happy with their situation and could only shrug. But it didn't feel right to Hermione. And it didn't help that Hermione was aware, at the back of her mind, the slavery of her own ancestors to white folk. House elves weren't the same, of course, but Hermione really needed to get a grasp of house elf history. But so far, she had gotten only a handful of mentions of house elves, and nothing more. Hermione put the book back and headed deeper into the library, in search for a section that might give her more information. A hint of blue caught her eye, and Hermione tried to dart away and avoid talking to anyone else, and ended up stumbling over her own feet. Hermione Granger. Hands reached out to steady her. Hermione's mood darkened. Fleur Delacour, she said, her voice pitched high in over-politeness. She took a half step away from Fleur. Fleur's lips tightened, and she met Hermione's gaze head on. I need your assistance. Hermione's eyes widened and then immediately narrowed. What do you mean? You don't need help from me. You're, oh, so pretty and smart and strong and good at everything and everyone. Fleur snorted. Do you hate me, Hermione Granger? I've done nothing to offend you. You have, Hermione snapped. There's nothing wrong about Hogwarts. The food here is fine. The weather is fine. It's all fine.
Fleur raised an eyebrow.
Fine. You do not say good or great. Allow me to take you Paris for a day. Well, Hermione spluttered, I bet you say that to all the boys. You just walk around like... Do you begrudge me for being Vela? Fleur suddenly said. I cannot control my heritage any more than you can control yours. Hermione was rendered speechless. However, I am not here to fight you, Fleur continued. I need your assistance. A favor? Involving those boys, in fact. See, I do not want to go with the Yule Ball with any of them, so I proclaimed that I will be going with you, Hermione Granger. Boys not good enough for you, were the words on Hermione's lips before she registered the second part of Fleur's words. You want me, Hermione tried to parse. You are the brightest wicks in Hogwarts, are you not? I will not want to go with anyone lesser. Hermione scowled even as she blushed. Flattery will get you nowhere. Fleur shrugged. It is not flattery if it is true. Hermione Granger, please, a favor. It is not about loving each other. Only that you accompany me to the Yule Ball and dance, just once. And I will do any task you wish of me that is equivalent to your efforts in fulfilling my favor. Hermione hesitated. Unless there is someone else you are going with, Fleur said. If so, then the schools shall know that you rejected me. Hermione scowled on both accounts. Certain people had been moaning about the Yule Ball and dates without ever thinking about Hermione. And Hermione didn't like the idea of rumors of her being the one to reject Fleur Delacour. Fine, she said grudgingly. I will go with you. But you better not insult whatever I wear. Why would I? Fleur said, confused. We will be going shopping together to ensure that we match. Since it is a favor, I will cover all costs. Fine, Hermione said again. Contact me when you want to do that. Unless there's anything else, I am busy. Very well, I will see you then, Fleur said. Hermione walked away first, as far away from Fleur as she could, adrenaline from the encounter rushing through her ears. When she was far enough, Hermione peered at the dusty history of magic books, trying to spot a title that would be promising. She stiffened when she heard footsteps, and from the hint of blue from the corner of her eye, she knew it was Fleur. Hermione glared at the books and took out a random one to skim. But she was hyper-aware that Fleur was further down the aisle and was looking at books there too. But Fleur said nothing. Curiosity overcame Hermione, and she turned to Fleur, who was methodically taking out book after book to add to her floating pile. That made Hermione even more curious. What are you doing? Fleur turned to her. These books are for my study, she said. She nodded at Hermione. And what are you doing? I'm trying to find out about house elves, Hermione admitted. But there's virtually nothing written about them, and certainly nothing written by them. Do you not like house elves? Fleur asked. They have not done anything wrong, have they? Aside from cooking English food? Hermione rolled her eyes. Don't you see they're basically slaves? Fleur's brows pinched together. In history, they say that house elves are like the guardians of the home. They are to observe and protect. And what about cooking and cleaning for nothing? Hermione said sharply. It is not for nothing, Fleur countered. In Boque's Baton Chateau, the elves are returned with gifts of magic and, milk of the moonlight. The elves sustain the chateau and the lands sustain the elves. Do you mean milk from mooncalves? No. Perhaps essence of the moonlight. Moonlight is distilled into liquid form. Once, long ago, one would leave out saucers of such moonlight milk in payment for the elves' work during the night. It is a concentrated form of magic. So before, they were doing it freely. But now, they're stuck in Hogwarts, or Boque's Baton, all day and night, working for us. Hermione frowned. In return for magic, Fleur nodded. Yeah, right, magic, and not galleons. Fleur shook her head with a knowing smile. Hermione Granger, the house elves do not subscribe to the concept of money. They have no need nor want for gold of humans and goblins. Oh, Hermione's head dipped down as she thought about it. Maybe Fleur was right, but that doesn't explain the house, elves punishing themselves when they do something wrong. Ah. This practice, that is not so good. But the Hogwarts elves, they are not forced to hurt themselves, are they? Grudgingly, Hermione shook her head. She didn't want to be so grudging, but somehow, Fleur forced those emotions and actions out of her. Fleur closed her eyes for a moment, and book appeared in front of her. She handed it to Hermione. Perhaps this will aid you. All the best, for I must return to my studies. Hermione glanced over the book title. Homely House, Elves and How to Honor Their Employment. Flipping through the inside, it appeared to be exactly what Hermione wanted. She glanced back to where Fleur had stood before and wondered if... Hermione firmly stopped that thought and returned to her desk to read. Fleur strode through the corridors of Hogwarts towards the Great Hall for dinner, with her head held high. Word of her partner for the ball had spread quickly, it appeared, as no more students accosted her. Instead, they stood against the wall, gossiping. She didn't care. Her friends were at the Ravenclaw table, and they made space for her on the ridiculously long bench. What is this about your Hogwarts date? Amira asked in French. Fleur smirked when all her other friends fixed their gaze on her. Alas, the rumors are true for once. I have asked Hermione Granger to accompany me. The one with Harry Potter. Alexandre turned to look at the Gryffindor table. She is there, her head buried in a book. That looks like one of your books, Marie commented. Is, Fleur said. She is interested in house elves. The Hogwarts library is lacking, of course. Of course, Amira repeated, rolling her eyes. Now eat, Fleur. All this business of the ball is making me hungry. Fleur had a pleasant dinner, but the last cheese course was unfortunately interrupted by Hermione Granger. Amira smirked and shifted aside to make room for Hermione. Welcome, Amira said. Hi, Hermione said shortly, but her gaze remained on Fleur. They don't believe me. Fleur glanced back at Harry Potter and his other friends. What is it that they do not believe? That you asked me to the ball? Fleur smiled. But I did. Hermione scowled, her magic rolling pleasantly against Fleur's skin. Ron thinks I'm just trying to get attention. That neither of us would go with another girl. Amira's eyebrows shot up. This Ron is your friend, she asked, horrified. Hermione glanced quickly to Amira. Oh, Fleur's lips tightened a tad. It was clear that Hermione had some sort of feelings for Ron. Did he insult you about your being? Hermione's darting eyes was enough of an answer. Take a seat, Fleur said, shifting aside herself. We're about to have our cheese course. But Hogwarts doesn't serve a cheese course, Hermione immediately said, even as her eyes turned to the table. It does now, Fleur said firmly. The house, elves are happy to do so, Amira said. It is not fair, if we cannot have foods like of home. Hermione glanced back, then gingerly sat between Fleur and Amira. Are they really willing? She asked. Fleur let Amira answer, while she prepared up the cheese and crackers for herself and for Hermione. Fleur allowed herself a smile when Hermione absent-mindedly accepted the prepared food, as deep in concentration with her conversation with Amira as she was. Across the table, Marie and Alexandra had matching smirks. I didn't know you could serve food for anyone but your sister, Alexandra said. He glanced pointedly at Hermione. But I can hear why. Oh, shut up, Fleur said good-naturedly. Fleur was extremely amused when, even after dinner concluded, Hermione continued to stick with them as she continued her conversation with Amira, albeit having moved on to different topics from house elf. She only finally realized when they were right at the doors of one of the carriages. Am I allowed inside? Hermione said. Why not? Fleur countered. Come on, said Marie, who was holding the door open. Do not let the cold inside. Fleur gave Hermione a slight push, and she capitulated, entering. Inside, the carriages were heftily expanded with wizarding space. There was an immediate foyer space, cream and gold and white. The main floor held the common spaces, and up the sweeping staircase were their suites. Hermione's eyes were wide. "How does this all fit?" she breathed. "How did the Abraxans even transport all of this?" "This is nothing," Fleur said. "Boasbaden is much grander." "Bogotan is her basic standard," Alexandra said, winking at Hermione. "It is why she complains so much. Blah, blah, blah." "I should get back to my dorm," Hermione said hesitantly. "You are more than welcome to stay," Fleur said. "Though perhaps it is too forward to invite you to my room." Fleur's friends all snorted and Hermione scowled. Fleur capitulated. "Perhaps I shall accompany you back, for now. We may speak in private on the way." Hermione nodded and they farewelled Fleur's friends and entered back into the cold night. As Fleur glanced at Hermione while they walked back to the castle, she could see the conflicted expressions on Hermione's face. "Speak freely," Fleur prompted. "It is only us. There is no public face to uphold." With a sidelong glance, Fleur added, "You did not like me, so don't spare my feelings." "If you don't care about me, I wouldn't be able to hurt your feelings," Hermione muttered. "And that's a skill that takes years of practice," Fleur said dryly. "You are lucky to have your head in the books." Hermione glared. "I'm not stupid. I know what people say about me. My teeth, my hair, my skin, my blood, me." Somberly, Fleur nodded her head. It was not the same as what people said about herself, but the same insult, the same malice was there. "You will likely have to deal with that for the rest of your life." "And don't I know it?" Hermione snarled. She blinked and reined herself back. "Ron just doesn't understand. Sure, Malfoy insults his red hair, but it's just him. Not everyone." Fleur nodded again. "It is said that if a man could walk a woman's shoes for a day, then he would understand. But that is not so. Most of these pains are not so clear as a fireball, but rather are like sharp needles that pick at your skin until there is nothing left." Fleur tried not to smirk at Hermione's sudden wide-eyed look. "But people like you," Fleur snorted. "Oh yes, they like staring at me and dreaming until I tell them no. Since my asking of you, I have no more direct attempts. For that, I am thankful." Hermione shook her head, frowning. Fleur let her think in peace. Anyway, they were approaching the Gryffindor Tower, and Fleur rathered conversations in private. 2 weeks before the ball, Fleur said, "We will head to find suitable, matching robes." Hermione's nod was absent-minded, and Fleur farewelled her and left before she could hear their password, for that would not be fair. Hermione was a very bright witch, Fleur thought. A strong one, even. A few more years, and Hermione might have even been chosen as Hogwarts champion. She had a touch of ruthlessness that Fleur could admire. If Hermione had been a Beauxbaton student, and they might have even dated properly. Fleur nearly stumbled. Where had that thought come from? She firmly shook her head. All the talk of dating from her friends was jumbling her head when she sorely needed it clear. Hermione didn't understand Fleur. "I just don't understand other girls," she thought to herself, even as she heard the ring of untruth in her head. She grimaced. She had thought Fleur to be vapid, arrogant with her looks. But Fleur understood. Fleur didn't flinch of Hermione's talk of fairness and inequality. And Ron was still angry at her for being asked by Fleur to the ball. Angry at her for accepting and therefore being... "I'm not gay," Hermione had wanted to say, but the words stuck at her teeth. Because she had suddenly realized, had she ever thought about it? Or had she just assumed she was straight? Hermione had seen Harry's flinch at Ron's words and accusations as well, and Harry tried, in his way, to stop them from arguing. But Hermione was not going to stand down. And that led to her spending even more time with Fleur and her friends. It was so good to actually speak with them, to spend time with people who knew more and were willing to let her pester them with questions and were willing to give out answers. Hermione knew that it made Ron angrier and more sullen. She knew that Ron had seen it as betrayal. But damned if she wasn't feeling free of not having to argue with him, of not having to do his schoolwork for him, practically. And then there was Harry, stuck in between them. Which, speaking of the wizard, was revealing himself from under his invisibility cloak right in front of Hermione. "Harry," Hermione greeted. "Hi," Harry said, looking pale and guilty. Hermione sighed. "Ron doesn't know you're here, does he?" Harry gave a weak grin. "Is it that obvious?" Hermione snorted and patted the space behind her. "I won't tell if you won't." Harry's eyebrows went up. "Okay," he finally said. "How's Ron?" Harry shrugged. Well, he doesn't like it. It's bad enough that I'm one of the champions. For you to be dating Fleur too. Maybe he could stop comparing himself and start acting better," Hermione snapped. Harry winced, and Hermione inwardly berated herself. She knew how much Harry hated arguments between friends. And there was a hitch in Harry's voice that made Hermione stare at him, but Harry was looking away. "Yes," Hermione prompted. In a breath, Harry said, and Ron still doesn't believe it. "He doesn't think Fleur, or you, can be lesbians." Hermione pulled a face. "I think Fleur's bisexual. She said she kind of fancied Bill. Said she liked long hair on men. And women," Harry squeaked. "Oh, I mean, better not let Ron know that." "I have a half mind to force it on him anyway," Hermione muttered darkly. Harry let out a noisy breath. "So, Fleur's bisexual?" Hermione nodded. "And you're—" Hermione grimaced, cursing inwardly. What could she say? "How did you know?" Harry said, more quietly. "If you told me you were going with one of the Tri-Wizard champions, I might have thought Victor Crump. He reads books with you in the library." "But Fleur argues back about what we read," Hermione admitted. "Fleur discusses, and her friends too, and it feels a lot safer. And equal. I can't even mention house elves without Ron. Or you. Dismissing me." "Oh, I'm sorry." Harry fiddled with his fingers, his expression going distant, his lips a little tight. Hermione's eyes narrowed at Harry's uncharacteristic subdueness. "What's on your mind?" "Certain prats," he muttered. Hermione raised her eyebrows. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No," Harry said shortly. "Have you found a date for the ball yet?" Harry's expression darkened. "Not yet. As Malfoy keeps taunting me about. Maybe you could just ask him." Regardless of his answer, I bet his face would hilarious. Harry shivered. "Can we talk about something else?" he asked, desperation in his tone. "Like schoolwork." "Is that you really want to talk about?" Hermione asked dubiously. "It's been weird with just Ron. He keeps going on about Fleur, unless he's talking about Quidditch and Crump. And you hang out with both Fleur and Victor?" "He's jealous," Hermione said, smirking. "Serves him right. If he wasn't such a prat, I might have even introduced him to Victor." Harry grinned. "Should I tell him that?" Hermione shrugged. Your call. Harry hummed. "I kind of wish I could just take Ron as a friend. That would be easier, right? But everyone would think we're dating, and Ron hates that. It's bad enough with the prophet rumors." Harry's shoulders drew up. Hermione raised her eyebrows. She suspected that. She placed a hand on Harry's arm. "Whatever you do, I'll support you." "Thanks, Hermione," Harry smiled, relaxing a touch. "And I hope it goes well with Fleur." Hermione's stomach dropped. "Yeah, thanks." Now it was Hermione's turn to change the subject, and Harry didn't change it back. Fleur felt as though something was missing, and she knew what it was. Hermione had returned to sitting with her friends at the Gryffindor table, having made up with them. "You miss her?" Amira smirked. "How can I?" Fleur responded archly. "She is right there. I am glad that she is no longer fighting with her friends." "Uh-huh." Amira was unconvinced. "Oh, how terrible," Alexandra swooned. "Our Fleur jealous? Oh, how must it be to feel like one of us mere mortals?" "You better watch out," Marie said, glancing down the Ravenclaw table. "That Roger Davies may see this as an opportunity." Fleur laughed. "He is harmless and kind. A mind worthy to speak to me." Amira snorted. "But not as good as Hermione," she said slyly. "Oh, Hermione, what do you think of the dragons? What do you think of the Fae? Have you read this book, Hermione?" Alexandra mimicked. Fleur kicked him under the table. She is even trying to learn French, Amira said. We should give you to some private time, Marie mused. Fleur controlled herself. I do not need your meddling. Amira winked. Do not worry about that, for the two are going on a private trip this weekend, are you not? To pick out robes, Fleur said sternly. We're not going to elope. Did I mention anything about eloping? Amira smirked. Oh, shut up, Fleur grumbled. You better not let my mother hear of this. She glanced over to where Hermione sat. By chance, Hermione had been looking at her, and Fleur smiled reflexively and was relieved when Hermione smiled back. Alexandra gave a dramatic sigh. Oh, young love. I am older than you, Fleur said primly, and pointedly continued to eat her dinner. Hermione forced herself to stay upright when the portkey spat her and Fleur out in some unknown square, in some unknown country, all because Fleur wanted some matching robes for the Yule Ball. It certainly wasn't England where they landed. It wasn't even France, as Hermione had suspected, but rather some other European country. Fleur took them straight to a single narrow shop down one of the old streets. It took just a moment for her eyes to adjust and see. There were so many different dress robes and even suits and tuxedos, and Hermione forced herself to only glance over them. A witch introduced herself as Elena, and Hermione took half a step back and let her and Fleur chat away about what they needed. I was thinking these, Fleur said, jolting Hermione's attention and pointing to a cluster of dress robes. Hermione frowned automatically, not liking the lines and ruffles of it. Fleur raised an eyebrow. Or perhaps not. Is no use if you are not comfortable in it. Perhaps. She and Elena descended into a foreign language again, and Hermione was really suspicious when Elena suddenly clapped her hands with a smile. Just a moment, Elena said. I have the perfect design. If you will put on these, I will transfigure a mock-up. Hermione nodded tersely and went to put on the plain top, trousers and shoes in a separate dressing room. Elena positioned them both in front of large mirror and cast, the clothes morphing and changing into something more. Hermione stared at herself in the mirror, with the blue-gray robes, the sweep of it, and the sharp lines and cut V of it down her chest, with the stark white of shirt button up to her neck. And underneath, trousers and boots. Beside her, standing tall and with a smile on her face, was Fleur, with a dark blue overrobe that flared out and revealed a lighter blue-gray set of robes beneath, its hem down to her feet. Good, good, Elena smiled widely. She went and poked at them, modifying this and that. Do you like this? Hermione nodded, still stunned. It felt so much more correct than the periwinkle dress her parents had packed for her. Elena stepped back and nodded. They will be ready for your ball, Miss Fleur and Miss Hermione, she said. Charge it on my mother's account, Fleur said. Elena cast some kind of copying spell, and the transfigured clothing returned back to their plain state. Hermione and Fleur changed back into their original clothing. We have time for lunch, Fleur said as they left the shop. She smiled at Hermione. You like them? My parents thought a ball meant a dress, not dress robes, Hermione confessed. And aside from my school uniform, I don't really know how to wear a dress. Those robes suit you, Fleur smiled. They will be even more wondrous once made. But now, Fleur held out her hand. We are to have lunch. Yeah, Hermione's chest felt tight and hot and cold, and she took Fleur's hand to let her lead. While with Fleur, there wasn't time for Hermione to think, buoyed and floating as she was with the rich conversation that flowed between them over lunch, and with Fleur's history lesson as they wandered around town, unctuated with Hermione's own factual input, which more than once descended into them, contesting with increasingly random and non-sequitur facts, and ended with them both laughing. As the day wound down, Fleur took them to a tea shop. Did you know tea is the second most widely drank beverage? The first being water, Hermione said. And not coffee, Fleur laughed. The drink of students and harried workers. About 75 of tea drank as black tea. She peered at the different tea. We are in Bulgaria, however, and it would not do to leave without some herbal tea. I read that there are tea rituals, magic ones, in other countries. Not in France, Fleur said. A shame, really. Hermione laughed. It wasn't funny per se, but being around Fleur made her feel lightheaded and everything Fleur said seemed amusing. Fleur gave a quick smile and purchased 2 different teas and handed one of them to Hermione. A gift for today. Hermione's heart skipped a beat. Oh, you really didn't have to. But I wanted to, Fleur said firmly. She took out the port key that was their way back home. It has been a lovely day. Hermione nodded. Yeah, she took hold of the port key and wondered what would happen if she leaned in. The port key yanked them away. I will have the dress robes delivered to your bed when they arrive, Fleur said. Thanks. Any other words dried up in Hermione's mouth. Fleur dipped her head. I will see you later. Yeah. Fleur turned away first, leaving Hermione clutching her gifted tea to her chest. All her thoughts rushed in at once, a jumble in her head. If Fleur had been a boy, this would have looked a lot like a date. But Hermione had been around Fleur long enough to realize the arbitrariness of it all and that maybe this was a date. Harry and Ron had certainly thought so. The entire school, or schools, had likely thought so. Hermione rubbed her forehead. Nothing was logical. She and Fleur weren't dating. They were just going to the Yule Ball together. And maybe Fleur was just nice like that to all her friends. Hermione had heard a lot about her sister, Gabrielle, and how much Fleur doted on her. None of these thoughts could calm Hermione's heart, however. She had to face the truth. The truth that the night of the Yule Ball came too quickly for Hermione's liking. There was last-minute dancing practice with Fleur and helping sort of things with Harry and Ron, who had decided to go as friends since the only thing they needed to do was the opening dance. Hermione half wished Harry had just gone with Malfoy, because at least Malfoy knew how to dance, and she could already see the disaster of the opening that was Harry and Ron trying to dance. Blimey, Ron said, eyes wide when he saw Hermione descend down the stairs in her dress robe. They're so much better than mine. I offered to get you new dress robes, Harry grouched, elbowing Ron. You look great, Hermione. Thanks, she said. Though Fleur would be better. You're our Hermione, Ron declared. So you're better. Hermione snorted and smiled. Thanks, Ron. The 3 of them headed down to the Great Hall, where Fleur was waiting. Fleur had been right. The robes looked even better than their transfigured prototypes. Hermione could see all the eyes being drawn to Fleur, her own eyes included. Fleur smiled. Hermione! And Harry, Ron? She greeted. You look dashing, Hermione. I hope you are all ready to dance. Everyone will be watching. Harry and Ron paled. It's not, Ron started. I hate dancing, Harry said. Don't worry, Hermione said. It'll be over in a few minutes. Though the story might last our whole lives. Fleur chuckled. Feel the music. Boys, you are both Quidditch players, are you not? It is like flight, but to the tempo of sound. You must dance like a team works together on the field. Harry straightened, looking as determined as when he went to face the dragon of the first task. Thanks, Fleur. Champions and their partners, McGonagall said. Let us begin. Hermione had just the time to give a quick nod to Victor and his partner and to Cedric and Cho before Fleur was sweeping her into the Great Hall. And in those next few minutes, there was no thinking in Hermione's head. Only the music, the dance, and Fleur leading her round and round. Fleur felt so close, even closer than their practice dances. The dress robes made Hermione feel powerful. She felt equal to Fleur more than ever. She felt herself, and when the dance ended, she was so grateful for Fleur leading her off to the side to give Hermione a chance to catch in breath and get a hold of the heady feelings. Are you well? Fleur asked, voice against her ear in the backdrop of loud music and chatter. Hermione shivered and licked her lips, her heart thumping against her chest. Can we go somewhere quiet and private? Fleur raised an eyebrow. Of course, if you do not mind the implications in others' minds. Hermione gave half a laugh. Implications. So Fleur took outside to the rose bushes, which was thankfully empty and much quieter. I liked that, Hermione said. It wasn't bad. I would hope not. I am a great dancer, Fleur said archly. You said Well, that you wanted the dance with me to avoid all the boys. Then why me? Hermione shook her head. There are a lot prettier girls. Maybe even one of your friends, like Harry and Ron. Fleur gave a wry smile. I was not thinking. Perhaps you made more of an impression on me than either of us thought. I didn't even ask if you are attracted to women. I think I am, Hermione said in a rush before she could overthink it further. I thought I was straight, but I might be bi. Fleur's smile turned lighter. I made you realize? Not just this, Hermione admitted. A lot of things. Do you? Do I like you? Fleur rolled her eyes. My friends are telling me that I am head over heels, even though I am not an acrobat. Hermione felt herself succumb to hysterical giggle, where everyone thinks we're dating for the last few months. But we haven't even kissed, Fleur pounced, drawing Hermione towards her. Kissed, Hermione breathed. She tried to stay calm, tried to remember all the information she had learned about kissing. And then Fleur's lips were on hers and all her preparation vanished. Why hadn't they done this earlier? Fleur hummed against her lips, withdrawing a little. You know, I still owe you a trip to Paris. Perhaps, in the summer. It is the most romantic city, if you ignore all the catacombs of the dead underneath. Hermione laughed breathlessly. I would like that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Amazon wishlist or consider making a donation. Every little bit helps to keep the magic alive. See you next time, and until then, take care and keep dreaming.